Good evening and welcome to the first of three meetings tonight. My name is Dennis Bunkley, Mayor of the City of Beech Grove. And at this time, we will convene our Board of Sanitation meeting for Monday, December the 4th, 2017. In lieu of a roll call, I'll ask each participant to introduce themselves, beginning on my far right.
Dan McMillan, Clerk Treasurer.
Craig Wiley, City Attorney.
Sandy Seward.
Dave Harrison has an excused absence this evening. Board, you've been presented a printed copy of the minutes of the previous meeting dated Monday, November the 20th, 2017. Floor is open for any questions, comments, or corrections.
I have none, thank you.
No questions, comments, or corrections. I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll make said motion.
I second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye, and the motion carries. Thank you. This evening, Board, we have 3 pages of wastewater claims in the amount of $36,171.62. The floor is open for any questions or comments.
I have none, thank you.
No questions or comments. I'll ask for a motion to approve the wastewater claims dated December the 4th, 2017 in the amount of $36,171.62.
I'll make said motion.
I second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye, and the motion carries. We have no unfinished business to carry over from the previous meeting. This evening, we have one order of new business, and that is a sewer connection request. And I will defer to our Public Works Director. Brad?
Good evening, Board. So I believe we may have the resident also in the room with us, and it's up to you guys if you'd like to hear them speak, but we have a property at 5309 Adelaide. Kind of a long story, but essentially the nuts and bolts of it is their septic has failed. The health department at some point got involved and has given them a time limit to remedy the situation. I think the property is a bit of a challenge for them to do another septic. Phil has been in contact with the health department gentleman who says that he's been working with them as well. And what they want to do is connect into a manhole, and I believe you have a map of this that sits on the opposite side of Butler. And as you can see, we've highlighted about 20 properties that don't currently have sewer connection in that area. So it's something for you guys to consider. What they want is to connect under or through Butler essentially into the manhole that exists at the end of connections, the closest structure that we have in the area. We did get a proposal, I think it was either late 16 or...
I'll call you up when he's done talking.
It was either late 16 or early 17 from Westler to do sewers down Adelaide, and that was, I think, $700,000, so it was quite expensive. So not feasible currently for the city to do that. So I'm open to any questions. It's up to you guys if you want to let them present sort of their case, and then I can certainly field any questions you would have about how this would impact us or our system. I will say, obviously the ideal situation would be for the city to extend the sewer main and serve all of these properties, or at least give all these properties an opportunity to connect. With us not having the ability to do that currently, then we also want to be sensitive to the situation that they're in, with them being one of the 2 closest properties to this manhole. The only thing I will caution you, and this was one of Phil's concern, is there's only so much right-of-way and there's only so much room in a manhole, so you can't let all 20 people connect directly. Some of them, that's not feasible anyways because they're farther away. So these guys are at least one of the closest 2. I think there are 2 properties right there that are really close. Our big concern would be, if you guys allow this, is just restoration of the road. We have specifications and standards that we would ask them to meet if they were to do this. That road was recently done, so we would not want to see a new road cut up and not put back properly. And then there's a few things on the manhole as far as where we would want them ideally to connect into it. So there's some things like that we would want to make sure that their contractor's aware of so that it's done right.
Okay. Thank you, Brad.
Yep.
Is Mr. Royalty here? Come on up and, come on up. Did you write the letter, or?
Yeah. No, I didn't write that letter. I think that may have been my brother. This is just a petition that I got. I went and talked to everyone.
Can we have that?
Absolutely. Everyone in the neighborhood except one person, I believe, signed.
Can you give us a perspective? Are you the property owner?
No.
Come on up, or someone. We want to hear from you, your plight.
Pardon me?
Tell us, we want to hear from you, your situation.
I don't live at that property. I haven't lived there for 7 years. Wasn't aware of any of this until just recently.
Who lives there?
My son, 2 sons and my wife.
Well, maybe we should hear from them. Come on up. You want to come up and talk? Tell us your situation.
The septic tank has failed, and to my understanding, we have nowhere on the property that we could put a new septic tank because of the finger systems need to extend certain linear feet. We can't sustain that on the property. So the next option would be to either hook up to the city sewer or that manhole that's in the street. And like you said, I mean, the Board of Health is on us. Basically, everything has already been discussed. Do you have any questions that you could directly ask me that you need to know from me, or?
No, I just wanted to hear from you. I wanted to hear from somebody who lives there, the problem that they're having.
It's been an ongoing problem since we moved in 25 years ago, to the point now where the septic tank has failed 100%. My brother and I tried to put in a new one ourselves. That's when the Board of Health got involved. So we've already tried hiring a contractor to put in a septic tank, but that's not really the best option for us, because the location that they want to install it is the lowest lying area on our property, which floods all the time. So the Board of Health already suggested putting it there, which is like a fail situation, because we have all the watershed comes to our property because we're right on the corner. And in that side yard, which is where they're talking about installing the new septic tank, floods within the slightest amount of rain. So I can't see how that system would work. At $15,000, $20,000 to install a new septic tank, which is what a contractor came out and quoted us. So ideally, we need to have an option to hook up to city sewer. And we are in a time-sensitive situation because the Board of Health is already on us. And they have already threatened to condemn the property. And we're struggling to remedy the situation because the septic tank won't work. We haven't got an answer as to if we can hook up to sewer or not. Mm-hmm. And it needed to be done a long time ago, but now it's being addressed formally. So
I think it's a blessing that you live right where you live at, because if this would have been down on the other end of the street, I don't know how in the world we'd ever do this, because this is one, your area back there is one of about a dozen areas in Beech Grove that do not have sewers.
yes.
And 4 years ago, our engineering consultant, Westler Engineering, estimated that it would cost about $770,000 to install sewers along that stretch of road back there. And there is no way that the city could afford to do that.
Right.
So, but we don't want to turn a blind eye to you. I'm going to open it up to the board. We're willing to help you. I just want to hear from our board members.
Can you state your name, sir?
Josh Royalty?
Josh Royalty, thanks.
Hi, Josh. I'm Sandy Stewart. I do have a couple questions, just because this, so you said you had a contractor tell you it was going to be $15,000 to $20,000 to install a new septic?
Correct.
So do you have any kind of a quote for someone to put in, to connect to the city or to the manhole?
We haven't got that far yet. We haven't verbally been if we can, is it been approved or not? Can we do it, yes or no?
Okay.
We've asked in writing, in email, and to the Board of Health.
Right.
So the next step, can we hook up to city sewer?
Okay.
That's my question. I mean,
Okay, but you don't have a quote yet. So who's financially responsible here? Is it the
The
city or is
homeowner.
it the homeowner? Come on up.
Homeowner.
May I intervene and say that since I've got involved in this, I've got a contractor that is licensed, bonded, insured, and has talked with the health department about remedying this, and he was going to try to be here this evening, but he couldn't because of work. So it's a matter of trying to remedy the situation, and we have a person that can do it. It's just a matter of getting the problem solved.
Well,
I mean, would we almost have to see a quote before we could, no?
no, we would have, we could grant approval based on several conditions. Number one is, the plumber who does this is licensed and bonded and insured in the city of Beech Grove. And then another one would be that you would have to pay all permits. There are permits for tapping into the sewer, or any tap fee, and then you would have to pay our inspector to visually inspect the job once it's tapped into the sewer, and then you have to restore the road back to its original intent.
Whatever it takes to solve the problem.
Because that's, then, and we'll write a letter to that effect, Sandy, and then then I'm willing to help these folks.
Okay.
So, does anybody else have anything else they want to add? I may say that all the houses on the street, there are several of them are, you can go down when it's the driest time of the year. This is back when I did live there 15 years ago, and you can see problems with water problems, draining septic. If you look, it's just, I mean, it's obvious everywhere. They've all got problems.
Yeah. The point of the matter is the amount of money that it would cost the city of Beech Grove to do that. And we even approached Citizens Energy to do something for us on our behalf, and they would not do that because you are not a Citizens customer. So anyway, at the end of the day, if you were, in all honesty, between you and I, if you lived on the other end of the road, we would have bad news for you tonight. And I've spoken with the health department, and he's informed me of his intent if you don't comply. So I'm well aware of what you're up against, but we're willing to help you.
Appreciate that.
Motion to allow these folks to tap into the sewer provided a plumber is licensed and bonded, insured in the city of Beech Grove. They pay all associated fees, tap fees and inspection fees to do the project, and they restore the road back to its original intent.
I'll make said motion.
Dennis,
Yeah.
it ought to be subject to either Phil or Brad, that they tap in where they want them to.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
where it's best for the city and the other people choosing that one.
And so are you clear with those stipulations? If so, I'll ask for a motion to allow them to proceed.
I'll make said motion.
I second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye, and the motion carries.
What's your name, sir?
me,
Yes.
Josh Royalty.
Josh, okay.
You're Josh, and what was your name?
That's my dad, Denny Royalty.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Do you folks live back there also?
Yes, sir.
How far back do you live?
We live in the same house.
Same house, okay,
That's my brother,
okay,
and that's my mom.
all right,
We are the occupants of the house.
okay.
Okay.
Well, we'll go ahead and apologize because next year, we're going to take that road out, and it'll be a mess for about 2 weeks. And you're gonna get mad, and you're gonna come in here and hunt us down, but, so we're gonna go ahead and apologize tonight. So, but your road needs,
Question, that field that is in front of our property, right next to the high school, I've heard rumor that Beech Grove High School is gonna put in a parking lot and put buses there. Can you confirm or deny that, or can you tell me, do you know?
I don't know. The only thing I do know is that when they redo the road, they're gonna widen the road, and our engineers are doing it now. They're gonna widen the road, and they're gonna make it to where it can withstand heavy traffic, heavy.
No, they're not gonna
fast
connect that
semi-traffic.
to Cashard, are they?
No,
It's still gonna be a dead-end
it'll
street?
be a dead end.
Yes.
When
Okay,
will their paving take place, where the new roads come in?
Sometime next spring.
because I noticed they put new streetlights,
Yeah.
which they didn't have 30 years prior, and then all of a sudden they did, so I was told that they was gonna put a new parking lot in that whole field.
That would be a school issue, but the city, for the last 5 years, we have, whenever we go into a paving area, we put streetlights in. We just don't tell anybody. They just show up. So, and it's a safety issue. So, that's where we're at.
Thank you.
All right?
A question?
Any other questions?
Yeah, Dennis.
Yes, Dick?
When I signed the petition there, I was with the understanding that he was going to get the petition so I could get a sewer for everybody in that area. Is the reason I signed for it. Now I know that it's not. I'm going to scratch Bob's name and my name off of that list, unless we decide we want to tie into it at a later time. So if he could keep the depth, I've already checked the manhole. If they hook in down at the bottom of that, then other people, if they bring it out of the street with a large enough pipe, then if any of the others at a later time want to be able to hook into that lateral coming across the street, it would make it a lot easier. So that, therefore, they might have to have a 10-inch pipe coming in across the street so you don't have to cut the street again. And there's no tap on the bottom of that. And the reason I was in question, I didn't know if that was a private sewer for all the warehouses going down that street or not, so I didn't know.
No.
And it sounds like he only wants to tie in, so as far as that petition that he had on there, it wasn't for his purpose, it was for everybody in the neighborhood. So now we understand that's not gonna go in for that, you know, we can back away from it.
Okay. All right, we're going to still hold this.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes new business. Comments from board members?
I have none, thank you.
None, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make said motion.
I second, and the meeting is adjourned at 6:18 PM. We will go right into the Board of Public Works and Safety meeting. Let me stop this. Go. Good evening, welcome to the second of 3 meetings tonight. My name is Dennis Buckley, Mayor of the City of Beech Grove. And at this time, we will convene our Board of Public Works and Safety meeting for Monday, December the 4th, 2017. In lieu of a roll call, I will ask each participant to introduce themselves, beginning on my far right.
Dan McMillan, Clerk Treasurer.
Craig Wiley, City Attorney.
Sandy Seward.
Thank you, Board. We have been presented a printed copy of the minutes of the previous meeting dated Monday, November the 20th, 2017. Floor is open for questions, comments, or corrections.
I have a comment. Dan, thank you, and if you'll thank the girls for getting these done. It was nice to have a little bit more explanation on the minutes, so I appreciate that, so thank you.
If there's no other questions or comments or corrections, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll make said motion.
I second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye, and the motion carries. This evening, Board, you have 25 pages of corporate claims in the amount of $1,009,806.49. Floor is open for questions or comments.
I have none, thank you.
I got a couple that I want to bring out. The first one is on page 19. And I just want to publicly acknowledge the fact that the police chief has ordered new police cars, and the clerk's office has cut a check. I just don't know how many police cars.
9.
9? So I think that's very relevant to the public, that they know that, and that's quite an investment, and without any debt. So I want to bring that forward. Also, on page 22, Clydesdale Pest Control, we had a wasp problem up here. And hopefully that's been eradicated. So I wanted to bring that to the court's attention because they brought it to our attention. But we had been fighting it before that. So I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. And the last one is okay, I think that's it. That's all I had.
Okay.
But I wanted to point out the police cars. I thought that's good stuff. So, any other questions or comments?
I have none.
If not, I'll ask for motion to approve the corporate claims dated December 4th, 2017 in the amount of $1,009,806.49.
I'll make said motion.
I second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye, and the motion carries. We have no unfinished business to carry over from the previous meeting. We have three items under new business. The first item is liability insurance renewal, and we welcome Doug Walker and Randy Tilto back in front of us.
Sir.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. More money for you.
I wasn't gonna bring it up, but.
You are welcome.
Just make sure that we get notified to take the ones off.
Right.
Well, again, it's hard to believe it's been another year. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but wow, time runs pretty quick. Well, today, with the, talking about the property and liability and, excuse me, and the workers' compensation coverage for the city, it's one of those years, usually I'm standing here trying to justify to you why you're going to have to pay more money this year than you did last year. Well, this is one of those, you know, maybe it's El Nino or something, I don't know, but actually this year they have good news that premium is lower this year than what it was last year, which a lot of it has to do with the workers' compensation rates throughout the state went down for the classes of business, the classes of employees that we have in the city's insurance. That coupled with, you know, good experience that the city has had over the last year, and you know, so the premiums have come down a little bit. Just kind of a highlight on the front page of the of your packet, you know. We do a comparison of the coverages and the premiums from the previous year to this year. Just a couple of highlights. You know, the property and liability, or the property and the contents blanket coverage, we increased the buildings and the property according to some inflationary factors. So it's up about $300,000 for those amounts. And also I want to, excuse me, draw attention to on the payroll side. You know, the total payroll for the city is up about $200,000 over last year. A couple of the street and roads are up, and also the ambulatory services is up. then the police officers are up a bit too. So all in all, so the major changes that we have, we're actually, speaking of vehicles, we have less vehicles this time last year than we had this year than we did last year. So it looks like we're going to make that up here pretty quick. Your experience modification on the workers' comp, when I mentioned that your claims have been down, the experience modification we've talked about is a 3-year look back excluding this current year. So you had a pretty good year this year on workers' comp. You usually have somewhere between 16 and 20 claims almost year after year. It's kind of like it's just pretty consistent. You just have these number of claims about every year. This past year you had 18, so we're right within that wheelhouse. The good news is it was mainly medical claims, so there wasn't hardly any time off work or indemnity, as we call it in the work comp world, indemnity claims, which is good because that means the injuries were not serious. People could get back to work. The back to work program has helped some of that. So all in all, if you turn to the third page of the comparison, you'll see where we are from a premium standpoint overall. So you can see we're down about $13,000 from the year before. Now we have the detail of all the quote and everything tabbed behind in the proposal. I'd be more than happy to go back through any of that with anybody or have any questions that anybody might have.
Andy, you have any questions?
So will it change since we're adding on a new police?
Oh, yeah, it did go up some, but not very much.
Okay. That's my only question.
I don't have any questions.
Doug, I do have one question for you. Just for example, one of our crossing guards was hit by a vehicle. It was the vehicle's fault.
Right.
Do you guys go back after the individual or?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
So then is that credited back towards
Correct.
us?
Yes.
Okay,
And sometimes the wheels of subrogation move slowly.
right.
But anyway, they do go back after it, if it's collectible, of course.
Okay,
Insurance companies like to get their money back.
right.
So.
Any other thoughts or any other questions for our consultant?
No, thank you.
What would the motion be, Doug, to accept the,
To accept the property liability and workers' compensation proposal as presented.
And that's the total,
Yes.
the three, okay. I'll make said motion.
I second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye, and the motion carries.
Well, thank you very much. If you come up, you go back through the proposal and you find a question or something, please give me a call, or if I'm not in, Peggy could probably answer it for you too. So,
Okay.
again, thank you for the vote of confidence and for the past year, and we'll have another good one this next year. And Dan, I got these things you can sign and just send on back to.
Okay. As far as the judges and my bond, that's not included on this here. Am I correct? Because I know mine's like 300,000 and his like 150, I believe.
I think we kept it separate.
Right.
Yours is separate, but the judges.
Randy, did you want to speak? Come on up. Hear from you.
I'm just a pretty face. He's the brains, and I'm the.
Somebody needs to go to the eye doctor.
I just kind of dress things up a little bit, so.
We're over here, Randy.
No, I don't have anything to say. I do want to say I appreciate the business that you've given us, and I appreciate Doug. He does a lot of hard work, and he keeps everything up to date, and makes me look good, so, it's.
That's not easy.
It's not easy.
Is that just the one place that needs signed?
There's a paper clip on each page that you
Oh, okay.
sign. There's like 4 places to sign.
Come on.
Did you guys drop the plow at all last year? This past last winter?
Maybe once.
Not much.
Twice? Somebody the other day, the mayors, and they said that they didn't drop a plow all year. Not once. Salted and stuff.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, because just a couple of years ago, it circled the other way, everybody salt budget.
It all averages out.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Well, no.
One more.
One more.
That's cyber one, yeah. Cyber liability. The data of everything, went down, but a couple things went up here, and some things went down there, and cyber went up a little bit, just getting more and more activity, you read it every day, there's somebody got hit on something. Somebody get hacked, and two public entities get hacked and neither one of them paid, and they were able to find the back door into the virus and stop it. But, those people are smart, man. They got into my email, my personal email. Again, thank you.
All right, Doug.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
All right.
Have a nice holiday.
We'll move to final payment, stormwater project. Earlier, Board, we approved the payment of claim to Smith Projects in the amount of $9,819.30. This was for completion of the first project that we did this year. So it's pretty self-explanatory. And this closes out the first project for this year. So if there's not any questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve Wessler's request or final recommendation for payment for final completion and release of retainage to Smith Projects.
Is this the final amount, the 9,000?
Yes.
Is the final amount? I'll make said motion.
I second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye, and the motion carries. The next order of business, and I don't think there's anything we... Yeah, there is. I didn't think we had to sign that. Sign under this, Dan. I don't see where there's a place, but
I'll give you this one. Keep that one.
we'll just sign under that.
Okay.
Here's this one. The next order of business was a part-time employee pay increase for the Parks Department for 2018. Due to Counselor Harrison being out tonight and Board Member Seward's son works for the Parks Department, it would be in the best interest that we table this until the next meeting. So we will table this until the December 18th meeting, and at that time, then we will proceed. So we'll table that. And the last order of business would be nepotism and contract forms through the clerk. And did you want to comment on that, Dan?
These will all be sent out hopefully tomorrow or the next day. We're shorthanded down there. But we will send them out by email and to your council or Board of Works emails, and then just whichever one pertains to you, you can email back to me.
Comments from board members?
I have none. Thank you.
No comments, and I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the Board of Works meeting.
I'll make said motion.
Second, the meeting is adjourned at 6:35 PM. We will convene the city council meeting this evening at 7 PM. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the third and final meeting tonight. My name is Dennis Bunkley, Mayor of the City of Beech Grove, and at this time we will convene our Common Council meeting for Monday, December the 4th, 2017. In lieu of a roll call, I will ask each participant to introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Buddy Templin, Councilman at Large.
Jim Brooks, Council at Large.
Dan McMillan, Clerk Treasurer.
Craig Wiley, City Attorney.
Elizabeth Lamping, District 1.
Chris Duffer, District 3.
Kevin Day, District 4.
Counselor Harrison has an excused absence. Counselor Mascari called me about 5:30 and said he was sick and will not be able to attend this evening. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I flipped the agenda this evening so we can have committee reports, and our first report is the Youth Council, so come on up. Don't see the principal.
Oh, apparently she's not here.
All right, come on up.
All right. So far, our ladies basketball is undefeated. Our boys basketball hasn't started off to that good of a season so far. Our swim team, our women's swim team is 5-1, 5 wins, 1 loss, and but they're at a meet right now, so I don't want to jinx it. The guys, they've already started off rougher, so what else? I don't know. The principal had the agenda.
The wrestling team.
Wrestling team's doing pretty good. I think they have a meet this weekend. I believe so. I don't know the wrestling that much, but besides that, everything's going pretty well, and we're all just getting ready for finals.
With the principal not being here, did you want to make a comment about her or anything?
I'm
sure it will not get back.
grievances. There's none. She's awesome.
Okay, good.
So yeah, that's pretty much it.
And you want to talk about teen court?
Do
you know anything about it?
We have a set for December 11th or 12th. I believe it's one of those 2 days. I have a lot going on December 11th and 12th, so I get the days mixed up. But we have a couple cases that we're going to do that night, so everything's going amazingly when it comes to teen court. There you go.
You want to add anything? No. All right, let the record show that the principal is late. The ABC, you have an ABC report, Greenscape Commission report. I didn't see a report from compliance. Public safety report you should have. Dan, do you have a financial tonight?
Yes. Good evening, councilors. In September and October, we made the following lease purchase payments. 2015 police cars, $12,729, balance owing $38,188. 2016 DPW and Parks vehicles, $26,496, balance owing $157,667.44. 2014 DPW skid steer, $7,892.73, balance owing $23,125.64. We are not obtaining a tax anticipation warrant this year. It is the first time in many years the city has not needed to have one. I am considering obtaining a line of credit just for the security it would offer us in the event we needed the money. Our lowest monthly bank balance this year was in May, when it dipped to $3,253,825.57. Our tax anticipation warrant for 2017 was $1,295,000, so we never dipped into that money, yet we are required to pay interest on it. I tried to pay it off early, but we still have to pay the entire year of interest. When I took office in 2012, the tax anticipation warrant was $2,394,946.91. The rainy day fund had $55,133 in it. After tonight's transfer of $29,000, it will have approximately $505,000. One of my goals was to discontinue the need for a tax anticipation warrant. My main goal was to see financial stability restored to the city. I feel both have been achieved, and I am thankful. The city website continues to grow and is a great asset to the citizens. It is a valuable resource to many. It has still not cost the taxpayers one penny since its inception. Community events can be added free of charge by emailing me at dan.mcmillan@beechgrove.com. Thanks to the website volunteers who continue to keep it updated at no cost to the taxpayers. Financial report, debt services, bank balances, and more can be found on the city website. The city corporation bank account was $3,743,893.45. Respectfully submitted, Dan McMillan, Clerk Treasurer. Our financial advisor, Jeff Peters, is out here this evening. Jeff, do you recall when the last time the city of Beech Grove did not try for a tax anticipation warrant, or do you know if it's ever happened?
I think as long as I've been involved with the city, they've always had a tax warrant.
Right, so it's good news for the city, and like I say, we've been paying cash for the police cars, radios, things like that, so the city is in good financial condition. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
We'll move on to the reading of the minutes. Council, you have been presented a printed copy of the minutes of the last meeting dated Monday, November the 6th, 2017. The floor is open for any questions, comments, or corrections. If there's no questions, comments, or corrections, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. Next order of business is public comments. Counselor?
Yes, we have two people this evening who signed up. The first one's name, it's Jason. I can't read your last name. Please state your name and your address.
My name's Jason Ravenscroft. The address I put down is my work address, 3901 Meadows Drive. I'm not a resident of Beech Grove. I came in here on behalf of the Marion County Public Health Department to shed any light on, I think, the proposal that's up to discuss about a sewer connection. So I don't know if it might be more beneficial to allow the other person to speak first.
You have 3 minutes. You can speak
Okay.
on any topic you want.
Okay, well, I just wanted to kind of discuss briefly the situation that we've run into in a particular property that doesn't have sewer access and very likely may run into in some other properties there on Adelaide and Butler Avenue. We've got a property with a septic failure that has very poor septic repair options. So I know there's, been some discussion about extending a sewer down Adelaide and Butler, and I'm not really here to necessarily tell you guys how to spend your money or whether this needs to be done. What I would like to do is highlight the situation that we find ourselves in often when we have a lack of infrastructure for homes, homes that were built a long time ago under different septic standards that don't have room for septic repairs. So we unfortunately get in the position of having to make sure that we have properties that are not discharging sewage into the environment or having backups in properties. And in doing so, we have to find some remedy that allows those homes to be occupied safely, and unfortunately that isn't always possible without a sewer infrastructure. So we do find ourselves in situations where we have limited repair options or options that become very difficult, and usually with difficulty goes expense. So sometimes these repair options can very easily get into the $20,000, $30,000 range, if that's even possible in some properties. So these particular properties, small lots, old systems, probably most of them getting near the end of their lifespan, and not all those properties are going to have viable septic repair options. So,
Jason, at our Board of Sanitation meeting, we addressed that issue. The family was here, and we talked to them about it, and we agreed to let them tap into the sewer system.
Okay.
Provided they meet certain conditions. Now, I think it's important for this group is they're very fortunate because they were the first house off of Butler at Adelaide. If they would have been the last house at the end of Adelaide, we would have never been able to do that because there's no sewers in that area. And about 4 years ago, we asked Westler Engineering to do a assessment for us. And to run sewers in that area would have cost the city about $770,000. So there is no way that we could afford to do that. So they're lucky that where they sit, but not so lucky for the people down the road. And I don't know what the end result. I'm just going to guess that if we wouldn't allow them to do that, their property would have ended up being condemned. Is that accurate?
They've got some room, we would have let them do a septic repair, and as long as that works, there's a couple ways that a system's considered failure by state code if there's sewage ponding on the ground or it's backing up in their home. So we can allow them to do a repair, but it was it was in a very low spot that retains water. So of course, no guarantee on whether that would work at all, or if it would work 5 years or 10 years. So they could end up spending $15,000 on something that 2 years from now fails and they're back there again. So, we typically will find we will work out whatever solution we can, but the end result is it has to work. If it doesn't work, then unfortunately we have to go back to the drawing board. So people unfortunately get in the position of throwing lots of money at failed septics and can easily spend tens of thousands of dollars and then find themselves repeatedly revisiting that issue, in 5-10 years. So again, I'm glad that this particular situation, because it was an urgent situation, has got a solution, but just in, the idea of being proactive, just to put it on people's radar, you might want to think on down the road what is going to happen to the other residents down that road when their septics fail, because we deal with it a lot around the city. The Citizens Utility Group has a septic tank elimination program. Unfortunately, it's only handling so many properties, and there's a lot out there. So we find people spending tens of thousands of dollars having to extend the sewer down the street. So, it can easily, when you're getting 3, 4, 5 homes down, it gets ridiculously expensive really fast.
Just out of curiosity, when you say it failed, does that mean it's backed up in their home, or it just doesn't run? Is it slow run out, or is it going
In this
on top?
particular situation, I didn't see the failure. They had already started working on a remedy. Unfortunately, I didn't get the right permits and stuff, so I didn't actually see what failed. But the state says that septic has failed if it's backing up in the home or it's ponding on the surface. Now, some fixes can be easy if you got a running toilet. If you've ever seen, Meet the Parents, and you go out and, the toilet's just been running and running and running, fixing that toilet can fix the problem. Sometimes the problem is more severe and it needs a complete replacement to fix the system, so it depends. And obviously, we try to troubleshoot first to see what's wrong.
And I know the gentleman was concerned about replacing the septic system. Would we be in an area he was already quite concerned about flooding?
Yeah, so septics don't work very well when they're underwater. So an area that's waterlogged and prone to flooding is not a good area. We'll let people try, but, and then we'll monitor them. If that doesn't work, nobody wants to spend $10,000 or $15,000 and hope that something works. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Rick Snyder?
He's going to defer till after this presentation. Anyone else?
That's it.
All right, we'll move to special presentations. Earlier this year, Council, you commissioned the police chief and fire chief to have a study done of the police station and fire stations. The study has been done for quite a little while. I just didn't want to bring it in front of you until the budgets and everything were done, and that was behind us, so we can focus on this. And all of you know, you have seen the buildings that we should do something to remedy our situation. And my recommendation is to build a new police station and fire station. But I want you to hear it from a group that knows nothing about the city of Beech Grove and nothing about the buildings that they inspected and did assessments on. So what I want to do is I want to turn to our friends at Axis to talk about the police department, talk about the fire department, and then
we'll have some comments from the chiefs and the FOP, and then I want you to hear from Jeff Peters, our financial consultant, to give you some ideas about, if you are interested in doing this, how you might pay for this. So I'll turn it over to Axis.
My name is Bob Crowder. I'm the construction director at Keystone Corporation, and I'm part of the team along with Axis and the Strategic Planning Studio in presenting this feasibility study. Kevin Cooper is passing out some things that all the council members can review. We're going to disclose our findings this evening, and I'm going to bring on two gentlemen here that have experience in about 60 different municipal projects, and they're going to talk about all of our findings tonight. First up, Brett Dodd.
Good evening. I'll go through this fairly quickly so we can get on to the fire department. So I'll cover the police department first. If you go to the second page, there's a approach and methodology on there. And I'll just tell you when I turn the page, how's that? So we did a 4-step approach methodology. The first step, we basically collect data, we get a feel for the building, do some administrative things, and then we do questionnaires. Second step, we do the 30,000-foot perspective of everything. That's the strategic planning. We do existing space evaluations, we do population projections, analytics, and then we start our projection modeling, which builds a tool, a perspective tool. The system has inherent checks and balances. It's not a linear system. We look at everything from at least 3 or 4 different perspectives just to confirm the conclusions. It's like double checking your math in calculus. You want to make sure you have everything covered before you turn your answer in. Step 3, we go into space and staff programming. That's when you get into the detail of it. One thing to understand on this is that the staff and space programming are tools to begin the design phase. We typically find that we can reduce space through beneficial adjacencies, shared space, things like that. Typically, we can reduce it around 10%, but we're planning for somewhat of a worst-case scenario, but we feel confident that we can tighten it up if we need to. The last step is conceptual design, and we start thinking about how all this stuff can work together and what some of the options are and what it might look like. So if you go to the next page, this is the analytics. It suggests your current population, it's estimated around 14,831, could grow to about 15,745 in 10 years, and about 16,658 in 20 years. That's not an aggressive growth, it's not a moderate growth, it's more of a low growth type community. The next page is space standards. We established these initially based on our experience of doing about 60 state, county, municipal, and public safety facilities throughout the Midwest, all the way from Michigan to Florida. And then we go in and we evaluate what they currently have and what they operate, then we adjust it specifically to Beech Grove. But it sets a standard for each one of the offices, each one of the workstations, meeting rooms, and everything else. And that standard established the minimum operational efficiency necessary for them to perform the function or duty that's required in that particular space. We also included diagrams, because if I say 120 square feet, nobody knows what that means. So we put a diagram in there as we meet with each one of the different users and stakeholders. We confirm that will be adequate for what their function is. And we use the space standards as a baseline to do the space evaluation and also to do our architectural space programming. Next page is space terminology, net square foot, department gross square foot, building gross square foot, so NSF, DGSF, BGSF. NSF would be the square foot of this room if you took a dimension on the inside. Department gross square feet is when you have multiple spaces within the same department. You have walls and you have circulation to get to those spaces. And then building gross square foot is if you took a measuring tape all the way around the outside of the building. That includes general circulation to get to each one of the departments and all of the related support space. So on the existing space evaluation, this is done on a rating of 0 through 10. 0 is if you don't have the space, 10 is if it's adequate. Your current rating is about 3.7, which is unsuitable. It's well below average, which would be marginal at 5 to 6. So your existing 8,437 square feet that you occupy was adjusted to about 20,000 apartment gross square feet and about 22,000 building gross square feet. You currently only have about 11,995 building gross square feet. So you have about half the square footage you need for minimum operational efficiency in 2017. Next page is just a brief summary of some of the space deficiencies that we saw. There's a lot. There's a lot of deficiencies. When you walk through that building, there's storage issues everywhere. It's piled up in every one of the spaces. Many spaces don't comply with the standards, so it's difficult for them to perform even fundamental functions or duties. There's a lot of space conflicts. For instance, the conference room for the police chief is actually where you have the clerks, so they can't overlap. They do some training in there. And there's multiple uses for a lot of the space that make it difficult for the efficiency. They don't have a number of spaces that are required, and there are numerous ADA issues. This next page is operational deficiencies, and again, we have the space conflicts, but we also have poor separation between juveniles and adults, and even between adult male and adult female. There's adjacency and flow problems throughout the whole building. Spaces are just in the wrong place for operational efficiency. We have secure public circulation conflicts. You don't have a sally port for the secure transfer of detainees into the holding areas. Intake and booking is a problem. I do consulting all over the Midwest and North and South, and when I walk into their holding and their booking area, it makes my skin crawl. It's a potential, health or life safety issue for the officers. Then you have armory components that are spread out wherever they could find space to put it, so you have guns and ammunition in less than the kind of secure situation we'd like to see. So the next page is projection modeling. That's when we start building a perspective so we can evaluate our staff and architectural space programming. It suggests on the planning model of 16,658, you'd have about 46.61 staff and about 25,000 building gross square feet. The next page is staff programming. Your current staff of 41.5. 0.5 is if it's a part-time person. And then it suggests that in 2037, you might have up to 48 people. It's consistent with your current ratio per 1,000 of 2.8. You're about 2.79. This gets you up to about 2.88. That's consistent with what we see in metropolitan areas. When you get into more rural areas, we see 1.6, 1.4s, but it's consistent with what we see in metropolitan areas. Architectural space programming suggests you might need about 25,000 building gross square feet in 20 years. And that's fairly consistent with the programming. But what we suggested in this is you may want to consider some additional square foot to land bank just to stack the basement and the first floor evenly. It's more efficient to construct. And the basement space is really cost effective, and it gives you expansion down the road. So you might consider adding a few more square feet for that stacking scenario and land banking. If you go to the next page, projection modeling, that's where we put everything together. We put the space evaluation, the projection modeling, and the program, and we analyze it. That's a little hard to read, so if you go to the next page, it's a larger detail of it. This is our sanity check. Did everything make sense? If we see major deviations, we go back and reevaluate everything. Again, it's like double checking your math before you turn in your homework. So actually, the space programming came in about 500 square feet less than what the projection modeling did, which is no concern. Typically, the projection modeling makes more assumptions as far as things like storage growing at the same rate, and we found things like digital archiving and digital storage, digital media has impacted and reduced the amount of storage that you need in the future. The next page is parking projections. People don't realize that parking often takes up more space than the building does. So you want to have a good feel for how many parking spaces you need to accommodate. It suggests that your existing 43 spaces will need to be adjusted to 65. Then the last page in this presentation is a site diagram. And this is just a general construct of zoning a site for a police station where you have secure areas and non-secure zoned areas. It's basic practices of CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design, but you want to keep your public outside of your secure zone. You want to keep that all separated. And there's a general organization of the building. As you can see, like the orange space in the front area would be a training room that could also serve as a community room. Locating it there makes it very efficient. We don't have to duplicate spaces, and we subdivide the training rooms. It can also be used as conference room. That's one of those shared beneficial adjacencies. With that, I'll turn it over to Kevin to talk a little bit about the fire department.
The study for the fire station was a little bit different. When we program new fire stations, it's not necessarily based on population of cities, it's based on population of the station, the firefighters that are serving in that station, and also based on apparatus and equipment that is required for that particular station. So it's a little bit different. We were asked by the mayor and the fire chief to take a look at designing one fire station that would replace Station 56 and 57. Part of that, the main part of the process is that we actually work directly with the fire chief, and the fire chief designated a design committee that we worked with. So we met several times with that committee to develop the program. About 75 to 80% of a fire station is based on functionality, and there's prevailing standards that drive the design of a fire station. The other 20 to 25% is input that we get from the firefighters, and input from the community, input from even things like context and where the fire station might be located. In this particular case, we're not sure where the fire station is going to be located, but we did a feasibility to try to assess how big the fire station would be to combine both fire stations. The other thing that we did that was very helpful, not only did we tour the two fire stations, and we also identified deficiencies with both Station 56 and 57, but we toured several stations with the design committee. So not only did we want to know what works and doesn't work in the current stations, we wanted to identify stations that we've designed and other fire stations around Beech Grove and Indianapolis, Carmel, those particular areas, and identify kind of new prevailing standards for fire stations and get their input from the committee. So I think some of the committee members are here today, so good to see you. So if you turn the first page, we evaluated the two buildings. We wanted to identify deficiencies, but not in the same way as the police station. But I think the main proponent to deficiency with the two stations is that I think they were designed in the 70s and designed for 4 firefighters, and now I believe 7 to 8 firefighters reside in each station and serve the community. So typically, a 7 to 8 person fire station with prevailing standards today would probably be anywhere from 10,000 to 11,500 square foot station. Both 56 and 57 are between 7 and 7,800 square feet each. So that's one of the major deficiencies, is it just doesn't have enough space to serve the number of firefighters. The other deficiency from a program standpoint is that the women firefighter population is ever growing and continues to grow, and the original station was never designed to have separate facilities for women, and so they've adapted the building to accommodate that. So they've taken on functional spaces to provide space for women accommodation. So that's, the manipulation of the current stations has made it inefficient as well. One of the bigger issues that I saw is in both facilities, the weight room, the fitness rooms, which fitness is an incredible importance to firefighting. They're using or putting fitness in the apparatus bays, so they're in a conditioned space, but not a space that's typically conditioned like a fitness room. So they're out in the open. I would call it they're on the dirty side of the fire station. So they're working out. The fire gear is out in the open. After a burn, the equipment and the uniforms and the equipment all have, the issue with carcinogens with equipment, and, you're breathing that air in. So one of the prevailing standards today is to provide separate rooms for fire equipment. Now they're just storing the equipment in the bay. They just don't have the space to put it anywhere else. Other standards that are coming on board with the NFPA is to also provide decontamination space. So after a fire, everyone comes back from a run. They can go into a dirty side of the station, they can unload their gear, extract it, clean it, dry it, and then come out and take, there'll be a clean shower, toilet area, and come out on the clean side of the station. So you'll see that in the new program as well. Several other deficiencies, but a lot of it really is just a station that's designed for 4 is serving 7 to 8. So if you keep going through the existing space evaluations, we also use prevailing space standards. So if you flip through, you'll see this page, just to get you caught up. Prevailing space standards that are driven by just typical office use, but a lot of the prevailing standards are based on the number of firefighters. So kitchen, dining areas, fitness rooms, dorm rooms, locker areas are all kind of defined and determined by the number of firefighters in the station. And then the apparatus bays obviously are defined by the equipment itself and what's equipment are in the bays. So we employed those in this program. And if you go to after those standards, a very detailed written program that accommodates every space. We wanted to make sure that this project or this feasibility study, this program, we design it or at least program it for a 50-year station minimum. I think the 2 current stations were probably realistically designed for 15 to 20 years, but we want to make sure that this station accommodates the department for at least 50 years. So the program you see today provides administration space for the fire chief, living quarters for 13 firefighters, and 1 battalion chief, and it provides drive-through apparatus bays, double depth, so there is built-in expansion into this program for not only dormitory space but also equipment itself. At the end of the day, as Brett mentioned in some of his multipliers, we do accommodate circulation, we accommodate what we think are wall thicknesses, so there is a net to gross, but at the very end of the program, there is a summary where we do add those factors in. So for this 13-person fire station, you're looking at roughly around 22 to 22,500 square feet. In comparison, we just completed a fire station in Monticello that serves 11 firefighters that also has an admin component to it for headquarters. They have 1 additional bay, and their square footage is about 25,000. So we're being as efficient as we can with this station, but also building in so that this station will last for a good 50 years. After the program, we wanted to at least try to test our square footages. We wanted to kind of estimate how big of a site that we might need. So we took the program and we tested, option 1 is just a site that might be mid-block along a city street. Option 2 could be a corner site. In both situations, we estimate that you might need approximately 3 acres for this fire station. If you turn the page, we also wanted to test the organization of our program. Again, all of these diagrams, all of these plans, we presented to the fire committee each time, and so what you see today has been approved by that committee. So the plan organization, you can see on level 1, it would be a 2-story fire station, but really just stacking the sleeping quarters. We'll typically divide the more public spaces in a fire station with the more private spaces, which are the sleeping quarters. This station is large enough that 2 stories actually makes it more efficient, and also from a response time, it's quicker to go vertically down than to travel horizontally. So if we tried to keep this station 1 story, it would be, we'd be too far from the bays with our sleeping quarters. So to actually stack space is more efficient. The last diagram is just kind of a 3D. You can see how we're stacking the program. Everything in green is apparatus or equipment, support space. Everything in blue is the fire station itself. So on the first floor, you would have dining, kitchen areas, fitness areas, the more public social aspects of the fire station. On the second floor in blue would be the sleeping quarters, obviously. And then in the red would be the admin support. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to
Just a quick summary. It's a lot to absorb. I'm sure that you'll take time afterwards to look at it even more. But, you know, if you read into this, there are serious concerns today, let alone in the future. And the one thing I want to point out is that in our experience in public projects, that typically year to year, what happens is if it gets delayed 1 year, the costs will go up 3 to 5%. And the same thing happens the next year and the next year. And so we've been involved in a lot of public projects, and if they go on for a long period of time without some action, you know, the costs are alarming. They really jump a lot in 5 years. So I think with that, with our experience, we've also had an opportunity to measure what the experts have concluded here, and we find it to be very consistent with the projects that we've done in the past. So I hope that all this helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to touch base on a couple things that I didn't hear. Can you comment on the gun range?
The shooting range?
Yes.
On the lower level?
Yes.
And what would...
Was that in the criteria as well?
It is. It's part of the architectural.
And it's more compatible than what we have now?
Yes, yeah. The targeting system is really out of date, as well as the collection of the bullet trap in the rear of that. The length is a little off. It doesn't have good soundproofing. I mean, there's a series of issues with that firing range as well. It doesn't have the typical lane alleys in it, and things of that nature you can see in a newer or more contemporary firing range.
Can you identify the current police station, the ADA issues with that station?
Yes. Well, the ADA is pretty specific on every space needs to be accessible by the staff. Now, there are exceptions that you could pull in, but to my knowledge, there's been no adjudication ruling for Title I exceptions. So that suggests that every space should be ADA accessible. So you have toilet rooms, for instance, there's one right off the squad room that isn't ADA accessible. You have shower rooms that aren't fully ADA accessible. You have a number of other similar components like the countertops and the base cabinets in the break room aren't ADA accessible. So there's a whole series of subtleties in there. People equate it somewhat to the speed limit, but it is a civil rights law. So I don't know that you want to expose yourself to that kind of potential legal action.
On the fire station, the three prevalent illnesses of firemen, heart disease, cancer, and Parkinson's. How does this new design combat that?
Well, I mentioned the gear storage and the decontamination. So right now, the gear is stored fully loaded with the carcinogens, and they're in the open bay. Now we provide separate space that are separately exhausted and ventilated, so they're completely separate from any other space within the fire station. The decontamination issue is that ability to come in dirty and out clean, and that's a new FPA standard that's in effect, will be in effect 2018. So that is both of those issues are programmed into the fire station.
With our current stations, do we meet that?
No.
Oh. Okay. Anything else from Axis? I appreciate your presentation this evening. I want to call the police chief and fire chief up for a couple of comments, and then we'll hear from the FOP and then a couple of the firefighters and police officers. Chief?
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Good evening, council. I want to thank the men that came out and from the company that they came out and didn't know Beech Grove from anything. They were contacted and to come in and do a study of a building where you know what you have. They don't know what we have. We took them through, different officers took them through, and this is where their study came from. It's not us, it's not the police telling them what our problems are. They looked at it, and their experience could tell you what our problems are and what our future problems are. We deal with it. Buddy worked there. We've moved spaces around, moved everything possible, and we work with it. Makes it crowded, sometimes makes it unsafe. And then we've also adopted the court. The court staff is there, which has taken away our space. We work with it, we're happy to work with it, but going to the future, as they have said, it's beyond use. Every year, this might be a small item, we have 3 more file cabinets that are full. We store them in the hallways, we store them in the garage, we store them in a vault where our guns ought to be stored or ammunition. It's just something we can't get rid of because they're permanent records. And like they said, our guns and ammunition are stored in different places, and it's adequate, but it really should be improved. You've been through the station. Buddy's worked there you worked there, I don't know,
30.
20 years, 30 years.
Yeah.
And,
Older than
and you've seen how things have changed and had to adapt. And this building's worn out, mold in it, paint coming off. So that's about all, Rob.
Mayor and council, well, I appreciate the fact that Mark didn't harp too hard on the fact that Jim and I have been squatting in their back building for the last few years. And in all seriousness, we do appreciate what Axis has done when they came out and did their evaluation. We teamed together with our local 416 and our members to have a voice. And they had a voice in this committee. And their main focus was the factors on what impacts how we perform our job. We talk about the safety, our safety in operations, the efficiency of what we do, and how we operate on a daily basis. We take a look at our firefighters. We're in a different position because these men and women live in those facilities 24/7. So it's easy to sit here and look at what's not adequate. When we look at the men and female, their restroom facilities, the changing facilities, not having private dormitory. But we look at the overall space, the work conditions, the storage, the needs of the department for our operations. And so that was the main focus. Both of our stations have service as well. We appreciate what our forefathers brought for us, but we simply have just outgrown both of our stations, and we'd like to place our fire operations under one building. We believe that this building will provide the ability for us to serve the community, not only now, but in the future. We have built-in areas for expansion within this building, and this new fire station will reflect us as a department, but it reflects part of the community. So we want it to be built to not only look nice, but serve the people inside so we can serve our community. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer those. And again, I appreciate all the council members who were able to come out to our facilities, who were able to take a look at our buildings and look at the deficiencies and see the needs. I greatly appreciate it. So thank you for all your support.
I have a quick question. I was just curious about the Parkinson's piece. Is that just because of exposure?
Yes.
Okay. And I mean, is that early onset? I mean, onset is all different ages, or that's frightening to think about Parkinson's?
Parkinson's and cancer, it's a fact. It's a proven fact.
And it's exposure.
And it's from exposure. And we have secondhand exposure from our fire gear in both stations currently. It's out in the open, that gear off gases, Those fumes sit around, they linger. We do have a gear washer. We have one washer that we have to share between both stations. And it's absolutely phenomenal to be able to wash our gear, get it cleaned. But then we also face, we have to hang the gear up. So we're hanging it up in the bay area, which is already contaminated from gear. It's out in the open. We have to place it on our workout equipment and find other areas for it to dry.
There's too much
So it's just,
continual
we're just,
contamination throughout your life. yeah.
absolutely.
And then just the improvement of these buildings will certainly help the budgetary costs of your departments. Just the fact, I mean, this would greatly change that picture as well.
These new buildings are designed to be cost-effective, to be energy efficient, and I think it's going to provide what's needed for our department.
I mean, that certainly is something that would, of great concern as far as the savings that it could create.
And that was discussed with Access and how that will help benefit in the future, yes.
I got a question.
Was it,
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
okay. Was it ever discussed to these buildings that they're talking about, Access, to combine the police and fire into one huge building? Was that ever discussed?
I believe part of it was not feasible due to the size of the building and just the different operations that we conduct within.
Right at the present time, what is, and Access might be able to answer this better, what is the building cost today per square foot, and how many square foot are we talking for the police and the fire station?
I'll defer that to Access at this time.
Okay.
In generalities, today, you're looking at somewhere in the $200 to $250 square foot range.
Okay. And how many square foot for the fire, and then how many for the police?
That's not, that ends up, that's, the final decision on that hasn't been made. They don't know. They don't know what square footage would be needed for construction. So I think it would be a little early to, I could say 30,000 square feet, and that would be way too much. So they don't know.
Well, what they based their drawings on? What did you base it on the police station? What did you base it on the fire station, square footage wise?
20,000? 20,000.
For the fire? And how many for the police?
30.
About 25,000 for the police.
Okay. And that does not include any land at the present time. We don't have a place or the land to build these facilities on.
Well, we do. I mean, obviously, my preference is on St. Francis, but that's, if you take that out of the equation, we still do. We still own property on Churchman out by DPW, and we still own property over here where 56 is at. So that could be worked out with any land expense at all, so.
How much of that property just behind the, or just, I guess it would be to the west of the community center, that little woods there? How much of that do we own? Clear up to?
We own the whole woods.
Do we? I don't know if that, have you ever looked at that? Would that be?
You referring where the community center's at?
Right.
There's one thing about that land, it was purchased with grant money involving for park use only. That could be one issue there, though.
Plus the traffic. I don't know if they're in and out of vehicles because of Emerson Avenue.
Yeah, they're getting ready to build that extra road going that direction.
It's already built.
Is it? I haven't been over there. I want to call up our friends from the FOP, Rick Snyder. Rick?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. My name is Rick Snyder. I serve as the president of the Indianapolis Fraternal Order of Police. Recently, we had the opportunity to also visit the police department and do a walkthrough and review some of the issues and concerns, not only of our members, but also just from our observations as well. As you've heard here tonight, many of the things identified were a lot of the same things that we saw as well. Just to reiterate some things, we have concern about any life safety issues affecting our members, our officers, and our support staff. A significant concern was on the operational security of the building, and also as it related to the workspace deficiencies. The folks are really working on top of one another in this building. There is a significant concern about the data, equipment, and property storage as it relates to throughout the building, as well as the locker room and hygiene areas as well. We, too, are also advocates and supporters of SEPTED standards and principles, really throughout our community, but especially as it relates to our public safety facilities. We believe that we can lead by example on that front, and we would concur with the SEPTED concerns as well. And then finally, the parking, not only for the workforce, but also for the community that is served. Based on all that, the other thing that I would reiterate is that your public safety employees have been working in good faith of trying to make everything work with the resources that they have. It really does appear that they are at really the end of their ability to continue to do that without it negatively, adversely affecting their ability to serve the community. The final thing I would say is that we as an FOP do support the further evaluation of an updated facility as described by what we heard here tonight by Axis, but as well as the mayor. And I would just close with this. We find this time and time again, but obviously you folks get it because you deal with it all the time, but we absolutely have to ensure the health and the safety, the efficiency and the effectiveness of our public safety employees before we can ever expect them to be able to provide the same for our community and our visitors alike. So we would ask that you consider all of this, and again, we speak in favor of the further evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any police officers or firemen want to speak?
Nathan Rinks, FOP leader for the local in Beech Grove. You know, I want to talk more big picture about what we can do with this building. You know, we've got facilities that are usable, but they're increasingly becoming unworkable. And I liken it to that car, you know, we all had that first or second car that we just drove until it flat died, and you finally got to the point where you're like, I just can't fix any more on it. And I think our station's gotten to that point. You know, our female officers, you guys have all been down there. Their locker room is right next to the evidence locker, and it constantly smells like marijuana. Our facilities have mold where we work out. There's mold in the air where we're breathing in and exercising. It has to be addressed. I know Dan and our staff has addressed it as many times as they could in the last several years. I mean, this isn't something where it was a lack of trying by the city. They've put the money into it. It's just not working anymore. So now we have to start thinking about what we can do as a city that's trying to grow, a city that's trying to revitalize Main Street, trying to revitalize Emerson, a city that's got a great school system already. What can we do to add to it, to improve our standing, to make us more recruitable? You know, in 2011, Chris, you and Mayor Dilk and Richard Byland saw to it that we got back our city functions here in this office right here. Because I remember before that, this thing was a dump. And then it became unusable. And then all of our city meetings had to go out to the community center. Nobody wanted to be there. So you guys got together, you saw what needed to be done to put our city functions back here, and now we have City Hall back, right on Main Street. And now before you guys come to the meetings, you go meet somewhere on Main Street maybe to get dinner, and then you end up here. Guys leave here, they go right onto our Main Street, and they frequent our businesses before they go. Now, I know that's going to be a little bit different. That doesn't necessarily pertain to the police and fire, but I want you to think about it like that. Right now, we have a big void that St. Francis left behind. And we have an opportunity, potentially, to put something really nice, a really nice, beautiful stamp on our city, a legacy for all of you, where we have a facility that's usable, that helps us recruit, that takes an area that has started to become blighted that old St. Francis property and turn it into something really nice. And, I know it's going to cost money. I know there's going to be some funding options. I know there's things we're going to have to fight about. But you can't just think about the money. You can't think about, well, we can make do. We've got to think about what we can do to make this city better. Adding that over there or wherever we end up putting it improves our city. It's going to make everybody's properties better. It's going to make us more functional. We'll actually have an opportunity to start doing the community policing, the citizens patrol that we finally had to mothball because we just don't have a place to put it. And having people meet over at the community center a couple of times a month, it just isn't necessarily feasible. Just last week, I had to give a scout group a tour of our facility. It's a very short and it's a very unpleasant facility, tour to give. But scouts love to come here because we always allow scouts. I don't know if maybe other departments don't get to do it as much as we do or aren't as accessible, but we've always been accessible to scout troops, brownie troops. But right now, we're saying, all right, watch out for this storage. They come into the hall the last time, and we've got our shields and our rams sitting outside of the chief's hallway because we just don't have anywhere place else to put it. So this is an opportunity for us to have a better community building, to actually be able to, we've got a bunch of young, really excited officers, which creates an opportunity to start an Explorer program again, because we've got some young officers that would probably love to get out there and work with the young people in our community. So this isn't just for us to have, a better place to park. It isn't for us to have, a bigger office. I'm sure the chief will probably get a big fancy desk or maybe a nice chair, but it's also for the community. And I think we have to think in terms of what are we going to do to help improve this city? And what are we going to do to keep making this city more attractive to people to buy property here, to open businesses here, It all goes hand in hand. I know it's hard to see sometimes, but having a strong police and fire, having great city facilities all helps Main Street. It all helps our schools. It helps Emerson get revitalized. So I really want you guys to think about this over the next couple of months as we decide what to do, and think about what legacy you guys can leave behind yourselves as counselors. All right, thank you.
I have a question for you, if you don't mind. I was
Sure.
concerned about the files and all the extra files, because I saw those. Now, are there some kind of privacy concerns when you have, these are all files regarding somebody's personal, so is that because they're just, have to put them everywhere and anywhere.
Well, that's probably a question that would be better asked to Captain Mercury, who runs our investigation, so I think he would know more about the...
But for security of files,
Right.
I didn't know because...
Right, but yeah, they're everywhere, so certainly any of our civilian staff could, if they were inclined to access that data. I don't know what the rules are on that, but I'm sure anybody who came in and looked at it would probably have issue with the fact that we just have case files everywhere.
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Statcher.
Ryan Madian, I'm the Beech Grove District Fire President. Don't really have a whole lot that hasn't been said so far by everybody that's gotten up, so I won't stand up here and talk to you guys for too long. But basically what everybody has said, the stations we were in now were built to not really carry us for forever. And like Nathan said, this is a good time. Rebuilding Beech Grove, I feel like the next step is public safety. Have a nice new building we'd be proud of, help with recruitment. And just our partnership with St. Francis, they're helping us out on the medics. So we have even more females that are not only employed by Beech Grove Fire Department, but also through St. Francis. I think at each station there's only one toilet for the female and one shower for the females. We go on fire calls, or carcinogens now. Everything's made of plastics. The carcinogens are just so much worse now. We need to come home, shower as soon as we can, try to wash all that off. we're also going on EMS calls, bed bugs, other type of stuff that we have to come home and shower right away, take our gear off, run that through the washer. So there's multiple things, and if we only have so many number of showers, females are just waiting around in station where they could potentially be leaving bugs or other carcinogens for somebody else to pick up. So just as everybody else said, just really think about, the next couple months on what we can do, and just thanks for your consideration. So,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment? If not, yes.
Can I ask, Axis worked with Keystone Construction and SPS. I know it's a small thing, but when you work with a team, you want to say thanks to everybody. I kept saying Axis anyway. Sorry, small thing, but it was an honor to work with everybody. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. What I want to do now is, I asked Jeff Peters to come tonight to give you a perspective on some ideas on how, if you want to do this, what's the next step and how you can pay for this. And there's more than one option, and I would like for Jeff to come up and walk you through a couple scenarios, and then we'll move on to other business tonight. Jeff?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, as always, for the opportunity to be here. In a perfect world, it would be great if we had millions of dollars set aside when these capital projects came along, and we could just engage them and pay cash for them. But that's not typically the way that municipal finance works. We try to minimize the taxes that we raise from our people. And when it comes time for a capital project of this magnitude, you're going to have to go out and borrow the money. And as we've talked about before, the manner in which you borrow money are bonds. When you bond, you have a couple of different alternatives. You can do it through a revenue source, perhaps like your public safety income tax, or typically we go with general obligation bonds and property tax. If you issue revenue bonds in the form of like your local option income tax for public safety, in the marketplace, in all actuality, you're going to have to back those bonds with property tax as well to get the best interest rate for the people, because the underlying security that the markets will want to see is that tax base and the ability to levy it for those principal and interest payments as they become due. So when we get into the amount that you are allowed to bond for, you have, as each unit of government, a constitutional debt limit, which is 1/3 of 2% of your net assessed value. So for the city of Beech Grove, excuse me, that amount is about $2.9 million. You currently have about $1,200,000 outstanding on your current GO bond issue. So that would leave you a GO bond capacity of about $1.7 million. Either one of these projects, even individually, is going to far exceed that amount. So the statute that you would utilize and all units of government utilize in that situation where you have to build structures above and beyond what your bond capacity is you issue bonds under what is called a lease rental purchase agreement. Schools do it all the time. Most units of government will do it in this situation. And I don't know if you guys have done it in the past, if you've had a building corporation. But what you actually do is establish a building corporation that will be the issuer of the bonds. So it's kind of like a conduit from the city to the building corporation. The building corporation and its members will be overseeing the project, what the lease rental looks like, the payments to the vendors, etc. Then what you get to do for repayment is to levy taxes above and beyond for that 2% constitutional debt limit in order to make those principal and interest payments as they come due. It would give you about a 20-year window to repay those. Again, those would be paid with property taxes above and beyond the taxes that you currently levy inside the city for all your other purposes. So it is a new revenue source. If you wanted to do that same lease rental financing and use like income taxes, again, you'll need to back them with property taxes. At this point in time, you have pretty much allocated and spent your public safety income tax monies. So unless the city county council were to up your public safety income tax rate and give you a whole lot more revenue, you don't currently have any capacity under your budget to do that. So if you did pledge those revenues, you would have to somehow cut those expenditures and replace them somewhere else. A lot of expenditures out of your public safety income tax money are capital, so you would just be going out and borrowing that money for the same purpose. If we look at historically, we are still at very low interest rates historically, even for municipal bonds. Now, right now, there's a lot of turmoil in the market and the interest rates for the fact that the tax bill that was passed out of the Senate eliminates what's called advance refundings. And I know you've been through that with your utilities, and a year or so ago, we currently refunded the bonds that were in the TIF district. But that bill that's out there basically takes away the ability to advance refund these bonds, so there's a whole lot of supply, and the interest rate on all those municipal bonds are quickly increasing. But that being said, once the tax bill gets flattened out, the markets will settle back down. They are still historically low overall. So my recommendation would be, if this is something that you wish to pursue and you think it's going to happen in the near horizon, doing it sooner rather than later will get you a lot better interest rate than typically what we think we're going to see 4 or 5 years down the line. And again, you can talk to 100 different people. They'll give you 100 different projections as to what they think income rates are going to be, but they're all going to be higher than what they are today in almost everybody's projection. And with that, I think I'd be happy to answer any questions or revisit anything.
So, and I don't know that these gentlemen only issued or gave us the figure of about $250 per square foot. Would we be able to raise enough, Joe?
Well, again, you're going to be well above your constitutional debt limit, so you're going to have to do it through a lease rental purchase financing with a building corporation. So I think that's one thing today I would, start to embrace, is that if you're going to do one of these projects, it's going to be a lease rental purchase. And the other thing I would say at this point, come to the agreement that if you do this project, either one of them or both, you're going to have to utilize property taxes for the repayment stream, unless some huge change occurs. The statute was changed a few years ago for the public safety income tax, and now the city county council has an ability to raise a lot more of that money. But, there's a lot of political capital that gets expended every time they do that. I have not heard any rumor that that's going to happen, so at this point in time, I would settle in on the fact that you will have to raise property taxes in order to do it. But yes, you do have the ability to raise that to whatever amount you
Since
need.
it's capped by the state, do we have to do that by referendum?
Say again?
Since property taxes are capped by the state, how do we raise them?
Well, the property tax caps are 1%, 2%, and 3%, and over 65, there are some other caps that fall in place. You can raise additional property taxes. Some of that will be lost to the property tax caps. You will share that with all of your neighbors, that loss. You'll affect the school, the library, the township, and the county. You'll also affect your own operating funds like the general fund. But you will harvest more than what you're currently at, a lot more. And one of the requirements of when you issue those debt levies, you have to make those debt service payments. So if you have and create a loss into your general fund, you're going to have to deal with that revenue loss and, still be able to make the payment for your debt service fund. And when those property tax caps are allocated, they allocate them to your funds that are under the maximum levy, which would be general fund, police pension, fire pension. So you'll get enough money into the debt service fund. You did talk about referenda, and I guess I'd kind of talk about the different levels of bonding. You have different remonstrance procedures. So anything at $2 million and less, as you've done in the past, you can do a general obligation bond. You have to obviously take input from taxpayers, but there's no true remonstrance. If you're between $2 million and $12 million, you go through, it's called a controlled project, and you actually have a petition remonstrance drive if you get a remonstrance in that instance. And that $12 million ceiling is different for units of government with a gross assessed value in a certain level of which you fall in. It is the lesser of $12 million or 1% of your gross assessed value. Gross assessed value times that 1% in Beech Grove is about $7.5 million. So if you get into a project at $7.5 million or below, and you send out the public notice, you proceed with that project, and the remonstrance period begins, and you have 100 people sign a petition that says, we want to remonstrate, then you have to go through a petition drive. There will be a group that goes for petition against it and a petition for it. Whoever gets the most wins that petition drive. And then you get to either proceed or you have to abandon your project. If you're above that $7.5 million amount and you get 100 people that remonstrate against that project, then you're going to have to go to a referenda, and you're going to have to put it on the ballot, and it'll be whoever wins on the ballot. Lengthy process if we have to go the ballot route, obviously.
How much of a percentage of an increase on taxes per $100 of assessed valuation for a homeowner?
I haven't run numbers for, until we get what's the size of the project and how much it's going to be, then we would run all those impacts for you guys to decide whether that's something that you want to go forward on.
Okay.
Any other questions for Jeff?
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That concludes the special presentation this evening concerning the police and fire department. So I appreciate your patience. This is not new news as far as the condition of the buildings. We just want to give you options on how you, if you are interested in doing this, how you can pay for this. And that is one of 2 or 3 options. So we will take this up again in January, at the January meeting. So Jeff, thank you. And we will move on to unfinished business. General Ordinance Number 10, 2017 is up for approval on second reading only. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to waive the rules and read by title only.
I'll make said motion.
I'll second.
We will read by title only, beginning on my left.
I agree with title only.
Title only.
Title only.
Title only.
Title only.
This time I'll ask the clerk to read General Ordinance 10, 2017 into the record by title only.
General Ordinance Number 10, 2017 is an ordinance that amends Chapter 78 of the Code of Ordinances for the City of Beech Grove pursuant to parking motor vehicles.
Thank you. General Ordinance Number 10, 2017 is up for approval on second reading only. This time I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. We will hear it on third and final reading at the January 2nd meeting. Thank you. This evening, we have 4 items, and the first item would be, I'll defer to the clerk for nepotism contract information. Dan?
Okay, these are forms that has been sent out and done over the years. There's actually another one too, I can't remember what it is, the conflict of interest. So anyway, these will be sent to you via email, and whichever one pertains to you, if you'll fill them out, send them back to me, and I will make sure they get taken care of from there. But not all of them are going to pertain to each individual. So anyway, hopefully we'll get that done in the next few days. We're short on help down there, so anyway, hopefully by the end of the week I'll have them to you.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Next order of business, transfer of funds, and I'll defer to the clerk.
Okay, again on this evening, we did a bunch of them last meeting. This meeting here, everything that needed transferred were within the same category that the department heads came to me with. So anyway, all the transfers were taken care of. I can do it without council approval as long as it's in the same category, and that's what I've done.
So, no motion?
No, we don't
Okay, we're
have to
good?
take any action on that
All
at
right.
all.
General Ordinance Number 11, 2017 is an ordinance that amends the salary ordinance for 2018. These came up after the council passed the ordinance, and I don't think Brad's still here, is he? One of them is he's decided to take on a part-time mechanic at $17 per hour, which is not in the ordinance. And it would be not to exceed 58 hours per biweekly pay or 29 hours per week. So, and the reason for that, council, is that we want the mechanics out there to take on more work. We want them to do the entire city fleet. The gentleman that we were going to bring back, Tom Wilson, has decided that he doesn't want to pursue that now, so we have to kind of like start over, but that's all right. And the other one is within the police department and canines. And Chief, you want to talk about that for just a minute, please?
Good evening again, council. What I'm asking is that our 3 canine officers be paid for their position as far as canine officers. Now they just get what's called comp time. They're scheduled to work 8 hours, and by federal law, they have to be supplemented either in time or in pay that is adequate for their job. I'm asking that they be supplemented the $4,500 to get them to work 8 hours a day instead of their 7-hour day. They'll still be given an hour comp time on their day off. That won't include vacation or holiday time. That $45 or $4,500 gets them back on the road, and it's going to equal to about 1,200 hours for those 3 officers that are back in the road working for the city and doing their police work. And as I figure, it's about $13,000, and there's money in the budget for that, mainly because we haven't been able to hire 2 officers for the last year and then for next year. And I think there's still money in the budget to accommodate that small amount of money for those 3 officers to put them back on the road for those number of hours.
I guess I'm not understanding why they're not on the road now.
Because they have to be given some kind of compensation for them for taking care of their dog.
The time they spend taking care of the dog when they're not working, you mean?
they have to be compensated by federal law or by court decisions, actually what did, that an officer has to be compensated to take care of their animal. And what we've done in the past, we've given them an hour every day to take care of that animal. Now, what I'd like to do is pay them for that time, to have them work 8 hours instead of 7. That will bring them back like 1,200 hours that they'll be back working, but they'll still be, on their day off, their scheduled day off, they'll still be compensated 1 hour, which complies with the federal, with a court decision and federal law, that they have to be compensated for that care.
Chief, in the past, when they worked the 7 hours, was the other hour, if they could go home or do whatever they wanted in order to take care of the canine? Was that what that was?
That was. They were to go home and they would feed, water, groom, and that even took care of taking care of the dog, taking it to the vet, any extra services that they had to do, clean the kennel, clean their car, sometimes when the dog would get sick, so it's...
And since shifts work an 8-hour, well, most cases in Beech Grove at least, that part, did that leave as far as handling the shift, was it, times, was that an issue because you got that 1 hour that...
It would leave the shift short. Say we had a 4-officer minimum, and that 1 hour, they would leave them at 3. So that leaves a safety issue. If you go on 2 domestics, there's only 1 officer go to one of the domestics, which is a real big safety issue nowadays.
Was that a big reason for the change in this, is to keep the shifts at the proper staffing part of the reason, or was...
That's a bigger reason is to staff up and maybe, to make it safer for the officers that are working.
So what changed in the last month or so that it wasn't included in the budget?
A lot of conversation. We've thought about it, and now with Dan saying that he was able to give us more money for the car, it's like we do have money, and the safety issue's been there. So looking at the law, studying some, saying this is another way to compensate them and to bring them back into our workforce. We'll make them work, not make them, but have them work the 8 hours, which is better for the city to do that instead of the 7 hours. It helps the department and helps the citizens and brings the officers, financially is what they have to be compensated either by money or by time off. So we'd like to do them by money. That way we can have them working for us longer.
Those fit in the budget, Dan?
Well, I'll defer until everybody gets done with everything, and then I'll comment on the salary ordinance and what he's asking.
And like that's, the $4,500 will be for 3 officers. And I want to, all 3 of these dogs are narcotics trained. And I want to start a special unit that will be proactive instead of reactive. They can go out and they can stop cars. They can sit on houses. We get calls daily about suspicious drug activity. And all we can do is put a road officer on there sometimes, and they could sit for a little bit. These officers, that's going to be their assignment. They're going to work 8 hours, and they're going to take these complaints and sit and watch, stop cars that leave, talk to people in the neighborhood, and be proactive in our law enforcement in criminal activity, which I think will help our citizens feel safer in the long run.
When you say you have 3 of them, so there's 24 hours of service with these canines?
No, these three canines, they're not doing it now. We have one in the school, he's going to come out. We have one on a late tax shift.
Okay.
Then we have another one that's going to go to training.
Okay.
These three will be in a unit that will be specifically assigned to be proactive.
Okay.
Instead of, you get a run to a business saying, we have somebody stealing a bag of potato chips. That's not going to be their job. Their job is a bank alarm, some kind of armed robbery, and the narcotics part of it. There's a lot of narcotics found in traffic stops. People travel, they deliver to Beech Grove. We get information that certain cars are doing something, they can watch them. They can go after them instead of hit or miss with our road guys now.
So Chief, when they go back home, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, I was going to say, when they go home with the canine, there's no more compensation. I mean, that is being given up in pay here. So basically, they would take care of the animal really at their own time, right?
Money is what they're getting compensated, except for their actual day off, which they'll get 8 hours a month or 8 hours a 4-week pay period.
All right.
Instead of the 28 that they're getting now.
You said you're pulling one out of the school and putting him on the road?
Yes, the officer that's working the school now, he wants to come out. He wants to be in this unit, and he has a dog. So we will replace him with a road officer that doesn't have the dog, so we can use this dog to be more proactive. And the officer to be more proactive.
So the officer coming out, there'll be another officer will be put in his place for the school?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right, that's all I have.
Council, any other questions?
The way that I think, if we want to get this in by the first of the year, we could do it on 3 readings tonight if the council votes unanimous to do that. If they don't, then we just have to do it on first reading this evening. Clear? So I'll ask for a motion to...
I'd like to make a comment before we go further. First of all, I'd just like to state I'm opposed to any changes whatsoever in the salary ordinance. Number one, it raises the budget, which is not allowed to do. So you have to, your budgeting process would have to completely start over. You'd have to have public comment, open it up for everything. This was open to everybody and anybody back in June, July, August, September, October, and then you guys voted on it in October and November. None of this came forward. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to make changes to this. This ordinance was ratified by the council and was passed. And like I say, I'm just opposed to any changes whatsoever, and I'm not sure of the legality of it.
How much money are we talking about?
It's not the money, Craig. It's the
We've done
ordinance,
this in the past, though, haven't we?
not to my knowledge.
I mean, it's such a small amount of money.
It's not the money. When something is advertised through the state of Indiana and they have certain guidelines you go by, you have to start completely over. It's just like your meeting notices. If they're not posted, you can't have a meeting. So, like I say, I'm just opposed to the whole thing.
The department heads in question here have came forward with a request to improve their department and improve the safety for the people of this city. So I would suggest that you pass this ordinance.
I just have a question for Craig, though, on that. What does that change in the fact that when we deal with budgets, and especially salary ordinances, that are advertised, if this is what's going to pass, people come forward to express their opinion based on those numbers. And I'm not saying that I don't understand the chief's intentions. I do. I just want to make sure that Dan did raise a question that I was a little concerned about. I mean, whether it is $1 or a bunch, I just wondered, are we doing what's right in the interest of the citizens? Tell me we are. I'd like to hear that.
Is it legal?
Well, Here's my thing. I thought we'd done this in the past. We've been in the salary ordinance. Are you sure that's not the case?
I'm not sure.
Well,
I put 2 calls into the State Board of Accounts today, and just to double check, and I never received an answer. I will be back with them again tomorrow. But like I say, I'm opposed to any changes because I think you got to re-advertise the entire thing. I think you've got to have public comment, and this blows the whole budget that was worked on when they had opportunity before time, months, and no one came forward. Now all of a sudden, we're having people come forward and say we need to do this and we need to do that. I'd suggest that you wait until next year's budget, put it in there then.
But with the dynamics of public safety, especially when you're talking about the runs that you have to make for drug-related issues, we have to be somewhat able to change and conform to that, especially when our citizens and the public are the ones that are going to benefit. And that's what we hear all the time from our citizens, is how they're concerned. And if these canines are going to help in that direction, then we need to be able to maneuver around that, I believe.
They're being
I don't think there's any
compensated
question
for
that
it
it'd
right
be
now.
helpful, but is it legal for us to do, Craig?
Well, here's my thing. I'd have to go back and look at previous meeting minutes, but I know we've done this. I'm almost positive we've done this in the past.
Without?
Without doing the re-advertising and anything like that. I mean, I'm not prepared to give it, to tell you whether it's legal or not. All I know is I know we've amended the budget, and I think we've amended the salary ordinance at least once. It wasn't advertised, and nobody brought it up.
I look at it this way. I'm not necessarily saying I'm opposed to it, but if the city attorney can't tell us it's 100% legal tonight, that's a...
We need a table.
And I do know in the past, especially to add a category, like we had the Parks Director was not in a salary ordinance before, and at that time it was different leadership, but they stated we couldn't even add, that's a title itself, it couldn't even be added based upon it was not already subject before the budget and reviewed by the state. So, I mean, if it cannot be done this way, then we could advertise possibly, but I'd like to make sure we're at least doing what's legal.
Or we could pass it on first reading and take it up.
I have no problem with passing it on first reading so that it can be looked at that way, but then again, we might be passing something that's illegal.
I mean, if Craig tells us at January's meeting that it's legal, we can vote again and do all 3 readings in one night.
I agree. I think, like I say, the problem's not the information here as much to me as it is whether we should be doing it or not that particular way.
I would say we should maybe table it till we get an answer from the city attorney.
I agree.
I need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we table General Ordinance Number 11 until the next city council meeting.
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign.
Aye.
The ordinance is tabled until the next meeting or until we get clarification. General Ordinance Number 12, 2017 is up for approval on first reading this evening, and I will defer to the Parks Department for explanation on the ordinance. Dan?
I'm Dan Norris, Vice President of the Beech Grove Parks Board. Beech Grove has an ordinance currently for special rec. They actually have 2 special rec ordinances. One's for general purchases where donations can be deposited, but there's no vehicle for us to decide where that money gets spent within the parks. Are you looking for a reference?
No, you mentioned 2.
There's 2 ordinances. The second one, non-reverting for gifts and donations is 35.0.15. The second one is one that we talked about, 35.0.014, and that one is the capital fund or the cell tower lease. Those are ordinances that were passed a long time ago, but there's no teeth to say who can spend the money. It's not an increase in budget. It's money that's put in there that we can respend in the same capital year, or in the same fiscal year, but it's non-reverting, so it can go to the next year, just like the cell tower lease. Donations or gifts that are given to the city. During the budget presentation, I read off a list of programs that we would like to offer. And the answer I got was, we can't increase our budget. I said, that's okay, we have a vehicle. The vehicle is non-reverting. This isn't new, the city of Indianapolis has it. This ordinance actually comes from Speedway. Lawrence has it, Fishers has it, Bloomington has it, everybody around us has it, and they put these same guidelines in the ordinances. It's not an increase in budget. The way it works is if we decide we want to have Life 101
Who's we,
class.
Dan?
Huh?
When you say we decide, who's we?
Parks
Okay.
decides, we want to offer Life 101 class, which we talked about was probably a good program, but we didn't have a budget for it. We can decide what it's going to cost, what we're going to have to pay an instructor, to find an instructor, then take that and it works backwards, goes to a justification of expense, and it says, okay, we have to charge each person that comes into this program X amount of dollars. It covers 100% of the program, not tax dollars. I'm not asking for an appropriation. It's all the same money. They pay for their instructor, and there's there's money that comes back and stays in that fund. Sorry. Additionally, not only can she do the one-off programs, we can develop additional programs for parks. I gave you a laundry list in June of everything that we would like to do in 2018. I was met with resistance. I'm okay with that. And I was told that you can close down your park if you don't have enough money. I said, okay. I said, we came back, we even proposed new hours for the park, for the community center. There's one clause in this that if we have a rental on Sunday, and if we're closed on Sunday, we can actually pay the staff, we can bring that money in as revenue to pay the staff to work on that Sunday. It's not new tax dollars. It's still the money that came out of that rental. So, it's nothing new. You have the ordinance in front of you. If you have any questions about it, I'm happy to answer it. The state Indiana code actually allows us to create this fund. It doesn't have anything to do with the budget. The money stays in this account. It's controlled by the Parks Board and the clerk. That's who controls it, and...
Who controls the money currently?
Say what?
Who controls that money currently?
You know what? I'm telling you honestly, I have written 4 emails asking our balance and how it's used. I've not gotten a reply in any of my 4 emails. Okay? So,
Excuse me.
I don't know.
Who did you write these emails to?
Do you really want me to tell you?
Absolutely, I do.
You and the mayor.
That's
The mayor.
absolutely false.
Okay.
And you can get an appropriation report any day of the week.
Okay.
Our Parks Department head gets one, and that's absolutely a
Okay.
false
I've
statement.
asked about these 2 accounts.
Yeah,
One, what was in that
absolutely false.
cell tower fund, and one was in how it worked.
The cell tower
money's in the
fund, the
general.
mayor and I gave you, not you, the Parks Department, that money. Previously, they never received a penny out of that.
Okay. Thank you. That's why I didn't want to go down this path.
This is all money that's in the general fund, right?
No, this money does not come to the general
The
fund.
non-reverting, does that include like shelter rentals too in that?
No.
Well, just park programs only?
Just park programs.
Okay.
That's the whole design behind it. This was actually talked about when you was clerk. It was actually talked about when Jane was clerk. She actually was the clerk when the ordinance was actually put in. So she recalled every bit about why the ordinance was put in. They didn't put the limits on it that was asked at the time because they really didn't know how it was funded and who was using the funds. So this program is actually Speedway's program. It's actually been adopted by National Parks and Rec Association as been the recommended idea or recommended way to create new programs. I'm not asking for more money. I'm not going to get it. I'd rather see the police and fire to get it, just to build their facility. What I'm asking for is I'm asking for the restructure of these two funds to actually incorporate something that there is control, and that when we decide to run a new program, if we want to run a Paint With Me program that we don't have funding for, we can't run it. But if we have enough interest, we would have patrons to come in and actually sign up for the class, then we would have money to pay for the instructor that we don't have today.
Okay. One thing I'm concerned with is the monies that come in, I think should be controlled by the mayor of our city and by this council, and that we shouldn't delegate that to the Parks Department. But if this is money, like new money, that you're bringing in strictly for programs.
Exactly.
And then you'll effectively then pay for the program with the money that you're generating by that, I probably would be for, but I would not be for taking
Everything
anything
that's
out of the
in,
control of a
everything
mayor.
that we ran last year, we have the funding to run this year, because that's what's in the budget. We can't develop a new program. There's no money for it. There's no money to hire somebody to teach an aerobics course or to use the gym equipment. There's no money to hire that. But if we created a program and you paid, whether it's $1 or $5, to go in and work with the trainer, then we could actually pay the trainer. So it actually develops its own interest.
And that's what you're talking about,
Right.
just that money.
Dan, do you have a ballpark figure of what kind of monies would be in this account?
Well, I don't know what's in it now, so.
Well, just referring to what do you think its potential when you think of the different?
When the city of Bloomington adopted it, their first year, they had about $5,000 in it, right? They're probably about 12 years, and because the money stays, the other thing is the money stays within that program. If I quit that program, then I turn it into the general fund. I actually forward it over to the general fund. As long as I have that type of program, I keep spending that money. There's no money to buy mats, but this could help us buy mats because it stays within that program. Bloomington currently is at about $48,000 in general fund every year that they run their program. They've relieved the taxpayer portion of their budget, almost half for programming.
My question, and this is the only one I got.
Okay.
Okay, is the revenue of your budget could already be, spending the money twice is my concern, would be that, we already have projections of what the revenue is going to be, and some of that money does come from rentals and stuff. You just figure what a budget is and what the possible revenue source is, that all of a sudden that's part of your budget, but you're spending on something else, just that.
We turned in our revenue projections.
Yeah.
And we based our expenses off of our revenue projections, off of current programs. So, again, this is new programs, new source of revenue, new source of expense. And so the only way not to ask for more tax dollars is to run a non-reverting program. It's already there. The program's already in our ordinance. All I'm asking is for there actually be verbiage that there's control over it, that there's a method to the madness of using it. It talks about who's responsible for the fund, and every bit of this is, Craig can probably tell me if I'm wrong, every bit of this is clad. It's not taxpayer dollars. It doesn't go against current planned tax revenue. So every program that she was gonna have, still gonna have that revenue.
There's a little bit of politician in me. I lied about being the last question, but.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You with involvement with Indianapolis and so forth, is this something they do as well?
City of Indianapolis does this every day. Honest story, in 2005, Broad Ripple, they said, the City of Indianapolis says, okay, Parks, we're gonna cut $250,000 out of your budget. That's more than most of our budgets, right? And our CFO said, Broad Ripple, you have no programming budget. none. And that was about $186,000 in programming. We're going to switch you to this non-reverting. They ran $312,000 worth of programming that year just in non-reverting. Now, the program pays for itself, so the revenue numbers that actually came in was only about $40,000, but it paid for $312,000 worth of programs. Just because we said, you can't have no money. In June, remember? That's what I was told, you can't have any money. I said, I'll bring back the plan that'll give us the money to create these new programs.
So it's proven from surrounding communities that these programs work, there is a big demand for them, and the citizens use them.
Yes, they are. And
I'd like to ask you a question. What program have you guys ever asked for that has not been funded?
okay, I'm not going to get in that discussion.
Because there isn't one. I'm telling you right now, under the mayor and I, the Parks Department is in better shape, more money allocated to them than ever before. So, you're blowing smoke to me on, and I can see why you don't want to go there.
Nope. I'll send you emails, but I'll send them to Craig.
You can send them to anybody you want,
I would
but
like to ask
tell the
that,
truth
I would
on
like
it.
to ask that the clerk treasurer could please not treat our presenter this way, please.
I've got a legitimate question. He said he sent me
Thank
emails,
you. Thank you.
which I never received.
Well, I can't send them to you from my phone because my phone only carries so much.
Why don't we go ahead and finish with your presentation?
So that's, unless you guys have questions about this ordinance, the ordinance has proven itself through other cities. We've actually reduced the city of Indianapolis budget by by utilizing this program. This is the program that's adopted by National Park and Rec Association. So that's why I'm asking for your approval.
So you've about persuaded me, but let me just make sure I'm right. The money generated, and it would be new monies generated, would be able to stay with the parks for the improvement of other programs or new
With
programs.
the improvement of that same type of program. If it's a gymnastics program, it has to stay with the gymnastics that's in that program realm. Kepler has a study for all parks. I talked about it in June. They have a study for all of our programs. If I run a fitness program, that's fitness dollars. It's not dance and it's not gymnastics. If I run an arts program, it's not fitness.
And so what you're doing is expanding what you've got. You're not taking away from what the mayor controls now.
No, we're actually keeping the same programs that we're doing now
Okay,
and adding new programs
okay.
without asking for budget. Any more questions?
I just have a comment. I want to say that your presentation a while back when you referred to programs and give very good data information, which I told you I'd look between Cincinnati and Chicago and places like that that showed differences in crime and so forth. And actually, I can't remember which city it was that actually took on putting more in programs because they couldn't figure out why Chicago was looking at a decrease, and that was the only change that they actually made. So I just appreciate your efforts that way.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan, while you're here, can I ask you one other question? Would you like to inform the council of any plans for the Hornet Park Community Center at the present time?
Right now, and what I was told later was that there's no plans. But I've also been told that there's plans that the Hornet Center is going to move to Central.
Right.
But I'm waiting until Wednesday, the 6th, and I'm going to talk to Mr. Kaiser and find out what's the deal is.
They are having a walkthrough on Wednesday, though.
On the 6th.
There's been no verbal communications then, as far as the Parks Department on the schools then, right?
I wasn't at that meeting. It was brought to us that there was a meeting, and that was the communication that came from the meeting.
Because I had picked it up from the public and had no knowledge of anything going on, and from different people that don't even know each other are telling me that, of the switch, and I felt kind of like I do at home when they tell me I don't know nothing that's going on, so.
Well, I'm not going to say how I know it,
Okay.
but, and because I'd be getting somebody else in trouble.
Yeah, I heard the clerk told you, but that's another
No.
story.
I did, I emailed it.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, general ordinance number 12, 2017 is up for approval on first reading. Counselor Lamping sponsored it, so I'll ask Counselor Lamping to read it into the record,
Read the
please.
complete ordinance.
Yes.
General ordinance number 12, 2017. General ordinance number 12, 2017 is an ordinance that establishes the Beech Grove Parks and Recreation Department's non-reverting operating fund. Whereas the Parks Department desires to establish a separate fund to receipt money which is received from donations, proceeds from programs, sponsorships, and other fees collected. And whereas proceeds deposited into this fund will be used to offset programs, fees, and pay for services related to the programs. And whereas the Parks Board desires that the clerk treasurer be responsible for receiving and depositing monies into this fund and shall supply the Park Board with an accounting of such fund. And whereas the Parks Department over the past 5 years has enhanced its programming equipment, grounds, and encourages community engagement. Therefore, be it affirmed that the Common Council has already approved a non-reverting fund for capital improvements and now desires to establish a non-reverting fund to offset the costs of programming. Therefore, be it further affirmed that the Common Council desires the following language be inserted into Chapter 35 in the Code of Ordinance. Section 35.015, fund established pursuant to 1C 36-10-4-16. The City of Beech Grove hereby creates and establishes a specific fund to be known as the Beech Grove Parks and Recreation Department Special Non-Reverting Operation Fund, into which all monies and proceeds in the form of program and related fees, donations, and sponsorship fees to the City Parks and Recreation Department shall be deposited. Section 35.016, purpose of the fund. The primary purpose of the City Parks and Recreation Department Special Non-Reverting Operation Fund is to collect and account for the program and related fees and sponsorship fees to operate park programs and provide increased accountability and ease of accounting for the revenues and expenditures related to the programs. Expenditures may include contractual amounts for the provisions of programs, marketing, printing, and related services for programs, and supplies, goods, and services related to programs offered through the Parks Department. Salary would be included so that the facility could be closed unless it was booked for a rental, in which this fund could help offset the staffing for the rental event. Section 35.017, responsibility for the fund. The clerk treasurer shall be responsible for receiving all funds to be deposited in such account and shall keep records as to the amounts received, the manner of the receipt, and disbursements and current balance in such fund at all times. The clerk treasurer may delegate to the programming and recreation director of the City Parks and Recreation Department and other designee of the Parks and Recreation Department for the collection of revenues for immediate deposit. Section 35.018, deposit of funds. Upon receipt of program and related fees or sponsorship fees from the programming and recreation director of other designee of the City Parks and Recreation Department, the clerk treasurer shall make timely deposits of all program and related fees and sponsorship fees into the City Parks and Recreation Department Special Non-Reverting Operation Fund. Section 35.019, disbursement of funds. The Parks Board and clerk treasurer are directed to only disperse funds from the Special Non-Reverting Operation Fund created hereunder upon receipt of a claim allowed and signed by the Board of Parks and Recreation for the purpose intended under this chapter. Section 35.020, limitations on the use of funds. Any funds placed in the Special Non-Reverting Operation Fund may be expended only for the purpose for which the fund was created, including any program-related expense or contractual obligation to provide programs. Section 35.021, non-reverting. Revenues held within the non-reverting operation fund shall not revert to the general fund, but shall remain available for use from year to year for the purpose intended. Now, therefore, it be affirmed that the Common Council desires Chapter 35 to be inserted into the Code of Ordinances. Now, therefore, be it further affirmed that this ordinance only applies to Chapter 35 in the Code of Ordinance for the City of Beech Grove. Now, therefore, be it further affirmed that this ordinance shall go into, and I put in effect 30 days after passage by the Common Council, signed by the Council President Pro Temp, attested by the Clerk Treasurer, and signed by the Mayor. So there was one word missing, effect.
Comments from board members, our council members? No comments, I'll ask for a motion to approve, table.
Make a
I'll
motion
make-
to approve.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. We will hear it on second reading only at the January council meeting. That concludes new business. Council comments beginning on my left. Betty?
Dennis, we
Yeah.
got salary increases for the Parks Department that was in there.
That got tabled. That's Board of Works.
But that would affect the outcome of the salary ordinance.
Well, the salary ordinance was approved with those rates increased for part-time people. But the board has to approve the rate increase or the rate stays the same for the part-time employee.
Well, on the salary ordinance, just to give you an example, they have $10 an hour. And the salary ordinance, council approved, was up to $13.77 per hour.
Yeah, they can't exceed that.
Right.
But they only want to pay him $10 per hour.
Right, but you've got someone else like the custodian that they're only giving $12 an hour, and she would lose money. We're paying her more than that now. So I'm just curious as to how it's a Board of Works item when the council is the one that ratified the salary ordinance.
Well, I think the board approves all part-time employment.
But they don't their salaries. The council did.
Yeah, they would approve the people who are going to work those positions, but the monies, but it does say, is that because it would be under the amount? They can choose whatever they want under that amount?
As long as they don't exceed that certain amount. I've always introduced it as a board issue.
But the issue being, you're going to have employees in the Parks Department that is actually going to lose money with the way they wrote this.
I'd have to go back to the director to see that might have been a typo on his part, I don't know.
That's something that you'll look into, make sure that those that are at current.
I'll ask him tomorrow. But any pay grade increase for people for first year, second year, third year, it always goes in front of the board for approval.
Understood, but those are positional changes, right? Those are not, or are we?
That concludes new business comments from council members. Betty?
I do want to say that the city, Dan and Dennis, because you guys are the two administrators, that it does send a message out when you don't have a tax anticipation warrant. I don't know many communities that do not do that. And my involvement in city government, and I know that Councilor Duffer made that comment pretty strongly last time. If sometime we ever ask for one, I hope everybody doesn't think we're in that big of trouble, because it's a normal thing to do. But hats off to that. I think it's a good thing for the city. One of the things I appreciate from the police and fire is there wasn't an I-me thing today as much as something that I've always believed in, and that's a new building for police and fire that the people of Beech Grove, within the reason of who they are, deserve good buildings. And not only do the police and fire deserve them for their safety, but I just think when I've heard Officer Rinks, I called him Statchel, Chief. He didn't hear me because he didn't turn around. But when there he is. But when I've heard that from when they say how it's going to reflect for the citizens of Beech Grove, that's the biggest thing. It's kind of like a proud game. Sorry to go on with this, but you want to be able to say that we have good things here too, and we're modest with what we have. And I think that that's a good starting point. And Dan, I want to thank you for coming forward up here. Later on, I'd like to argue with you about 15 or 16 things, but I'll do that later, okay? And with that, that's all I have tonight.
Jim?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the police and fire also. I was privileged enough to be on the fire department when both fire stations and police stations were built, and it's been a long time ago. The police station definitely needs to be replaced. Our officers are doing the best job they can do with the facilities that they have. Our fire department is busting at the seams, and with the female employees we have now, they have to have some privacy. And also, the decontamination areas for their gear is much what needed. I've been retired going on 18 years, and there's been a lot of firefighters that are gone now from cancer and heart problems that I know they got through fighting fires. So I'm behind anything we can do to help police and fire. And I'd also like to thank the police department for their Shop with a Cop. That was a very great program.
Liz?
I want to thank the Parks Department, the Perks Boards for being here. Dan, Norris, you do a fantastic job. You work hard, you provide great programs for our city, and you're not paid. So Dan's been in Beech Grove a lot of years, and he understands the people, he understands their needs, and I applaud your Parks Board, and thank you so much for really working hard to provide better services. We need that.
Joe Grant's even here, so I'm kind of hiding between a bar and stuff on.
I'd also like to thank Dan again for the lowering of the tax anticipation warrant. And those that have been here the whole meeting, remember that he says when he inherited office in 2012, he inherited that from me, and that it was $2,400,000. But what he don't tell you is, when I inherited it, it was $3.1 million. So we were bringing it down, and Dan has continued on and did a very good job. Kudos to Liz for the parks ordinance. I did not know much about it tonight, and at first from what I thought, I didn't think I was going to be for it. After Dan's talk, he persuaded me. Thank you very much, Dan. That was good. I did have one other question. Are you going to dress up like Santa this year at all? Okay, I thought you might. Yeah, I thought you might. And thanks to the gentleman that gave us our presentation concerning the police stations and the fire stations. I think it is obvious that we need new ones. It's just an incredibly difficult thing coming up with money. When you're sitting up here and you're trying to walk that tightrope between keeping taxes affordable for the residents and yet keeping services up to the par or up to the level that Beech Grove expects them, because, we're a great city. We've been a great city ever since I've lived here, and I want to continue that on. And kudos to the mayor for overseeing all of this. I met with him last night, and I got to say, he's a good mayor. I appreciate the efforts that he's making. That's all I got.
I don't have anything.
A couple things, council. I'll bring back in front of you in January the discussion on IPL, on the streetlights, and the direction that you want to go on that. Also, I'll give you another option on the police and fire department, and then you have several appointments for January that you'll have to take up. And then Joe worked for 25, 30 years. I worked for 25, 30 years. Jim worked for 25, 30 years. We never had washers and dryers. We had dirty gear, and we'd come back off a fire, and hour later, we'd have to go again, and we'd put that dirty gear on. We'd put those dirty hoods on. And it's better now than it was, but it's still dangerous. There's no respect for law enforcement anymore. It's unbelievable how people treat the police. And we have an obligation as citizens and elected officials to protect these men and women. And I expect nothing less than ratification of a new police and fire station. If not, I will be extremely disappointed. So, and I need to put in the record, Doug Butler died. Doug was the city attorney for a long, long time. He recently passed, so we need to recognize him this evening.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that.
So with that, motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Meeting's adjourned. Dan, I don't have a clock.
9:03.